who follows you on Instagram will see that December of last year, you announced that you were going to do a full-length Ironman triathlon. And you said, I've not really done triathlon before. This is what you're doing. This is the challenge that you signed yourself up to. And having an active lifestyle and a busy lifestyle anyway, and then Ironman training consisting, 10 to 12 plus hours a week. Why did you think, okay, this is for me. This is what I'm going to do?
I think I was debating what's next. And I've done a marathon before. I've been cycling an ultra race before, and I thought, okay, I am young. I am at a point in my life where I have the time. I can find the 10, 12 hours a week to put in the training, and there's no kids in the picture. And I was like, if I don't do it now, am I ever going to do it? So I had a quick chat with my family and the people who were near me, and my boyfriend, he tried to talk me out of it a couple of times. After back and forth, I looked him in the eyes and I was like, I want to do this. I feel like I just need to try and do it. I might never get there. It's a long path ahead, and there's many months of training ahead. But if I don't try, I'm never gonna try. And then he's like, okay, Laura, go for it. And so I was like, okay, sure. Then I jumped into it.
And you've done it. It is Thursday today.
I've done it.
Sunday, you got our Ironman bracelet on just to prove, in case everybody.
I was like, okay, how long can I keep this on? And I was debating with myself if I should just cut it off the day after or so. And I was like, you know what, a week to like just let it set in, not for people, but mostly for myself, to like think back and be like, whoa, you actually did it, Laura, because it still feels so unreal. So this is to remind me that I made it.
So you're giving yourself a week, so 3 more days of the wristband, and then is it coming off, or you're going to?
It's coming off. It's coming off. Yeah, the feeling's still there, but this is coming off. It's not really working with the whole outfit thing, so it's going to come off at some point. But I'm very proud to still have it on, and it still gives me something. So I might leave it on a couple of more days if it's still triggering something in me.
See how you feel. So why did you pick Ironman? Because there's quite an interesting phenomenon, perhaps, that people, it's almost like, I wouldn't go as far to say like cliche, but like people are like, I want to do something, I'm going to do an Ironman, I'm going to do a half Ironman. You're like, oh no, I'm actually going to do an Ironman, guys. I'm going to do the big one. But it's so many people want to do it, like the endurance thing. It's such a thing that people perhaps in their 20s want to do this. Why is that? Why do you think that is? What is the appeal that we all are feeling?
I think it's a really good question, and you're already tapping into something, and that's what's your why. And your why is so different. I think everyone has to have a why in order to do something as extreme as an Ironman. For me, my why was to prove myself wrong, to prove that it's actually doable and that I can do more than I'd ever imagined I could. That's also why it was a very emotional day this Sunday when I completed the Ironman, because I wasn't doing it for anyone else than myself. And knowing that I set myself up to do something that was close to impossible, I thought at that point, and then doing it and making it possible was such a milestone for me in my life, and has only given me even more confidence to see what I can achieve in the future in any aspect, fitness or work-wise, or just life-wise.
It's quite interesting when we push ourselves physically to such a depth, because there's discipline, there's the mental strength, there's the physical strength, there's so many different layers, and the deeper you go, the longer you go for, the more it gets. And you really can apply it to so many different elements of life. It's not just that now you know that you can do pretty much any triathlon. It's like when work gets hard, or when you've loads of things that you need to do in a day, or when you get overwhelmed, you have that mental resilience, that mental strength that you've built up over the past 10 months of training that you can tap into, which is so cool, really, when we think about it like that. It's not just about how fast can you, put your trainers on ahead of the run and, and the transition zone. It's about how do you channel that when everything's going wrong? when you feel like crap, that panic, how do you put that down and channel it in a certain way?
Exactly, completely. I mean, I think Ironman is one thing, but it's the whole life journey that you're on, about challenging yourself constantly, daily, when it seems like the whole world's against you and everything sucks and everything hurts and you're just you with your own thoughts. Those are the ones you gotta conquer. And I think that it's not just been about completing something as this race, but it's also been about mastering your thoughts and the whole mental side of it. For me, that has been something I really take with me and something I'm very proud of, because your physical capabilities is one thing, but it's a long day. And if you can't master every thought that comes in, some are negative, most are actually negative at the end of the race, then you're probably not going to make it, or there's a chance that you're going to quit because that's the easiest way.
And how did you combat that? How did you channel the mental strength throughout your training as well? Like, we're not just talking about Sunday. Almost Sunday is kind of the easy bit, isn't it? The race day. It's actually the whole lead up to the race. Every training, every session, every turning up and going out and doing your thing.
So I did have some help. I teamed up with a sports psychologist and we had 3 sessions. And before we started, I didn't really know what I wanted to get out of it. I didn't even know if it could give me something, but I was open to trying. And so we talked. We talked about the internal motivation that drives me, factors that motivate me, like external factors. We talked about my ups and downs, my doubts, my fears, all those things that I think you build up and that are there. I mean, the skeletons in the closet, we all have them and they're there. And I think taking one up at a time and just turning it around and trying to turn it into something positive, that was new to me. Or not new, I'm an optimist, but I think it was nice to sit with someone that could also put some words to it. And we had a second session where we did a whole visualization. So we talked the whole day through what could happen. Do I get a puncture? Do I crash? Do I black out? Those are like the negative side. What happens if everything goes right? I mean, what kind of feeling are you sitting with? What kind of feeling are you standing with when you're crossing the finish line? The overwhelming, the cheering, the crazy atmosphere there is like, I mean, it's already giving me goosebumps because it was so realistic to go through the whole day beforehand. And so starting that day, having done this work, I was calm, actually, more calm than I'd expected. And I was able to master every thought because it was familiar. I'd kind of given myself the chance to let that thought come up and be present in it and feel the fear, the anxiety, all the things that can come up, and then seeing that it's not something that's not something that's gonna kill me. And so I actually want to say I was calm for the whole 10, 12 hours that I was going. And it also just made the whole experience so much better in itself, to be able to be present and to know that you're in control of not only your body, but also your mind.
The visualization aspect is really quite fascinating, isn't it? Because I spoke to a triathlete not long ago in the podcast, and she was saying how the transition zones, she sits down as part of her training and goes through each part in her mind. She imagines, she's finished her swim, she's getting kitted up for her bike, she is doing everything. And she obviously then practices it as well a lot. But she visualizes it. And then you mentioned actually on your Instagram that you'd visualize the whole day. And then you mention it here as well. And I think that we almost underestimate in general life the power of visualization, because I've actually started doing that, before a podcast episode. you can kind of overthink things slightly. Oh, I wonder how it'll go, and especially if you've not spoken to someone before. I've spoken to you before, so I know how you talk, how you things like that. But when not spoken to anyone, you've not met someone. Say you're going to do a board meeting, or you're going to stand up, you're going to speak to your boss. Say, I don't know, you're going on a date, anything. Like literally, it doesn't have to be work, it doesn't have to be exercise. It can be life, or you're going to have a difficult conversation with a friend or something. Visualize it. See what could go right, what could go wrong. And not necessarily that it's going to control the conversation at all, but it's going to give you that peace that means you're going to be the most you within it. You said that you lived every moment of the day. And I think Ironman is a dramatic example because it's so intense in so many different ways. But it is very much something that we actually should incorporate into life, don't you think?
I completely agree. And it's not always fun. I think one thing is visualizing the great moments where you're there, you've won or whatever is the end goal. But also what happens if things go wrong? And when it goes wrong, what are your feelings towards it? How are you going to cope with this? And sitting and having those feelings, I actually like started crying at some of the times where I was like, okay, this is actually something that's within me and something that I am working towards. One of the demons that might come up when you're so far out on yeah, 8th, 10th hour on your Ironman. And how are you gonna react to that? Because okay, I might sit down and cry. I might completely stand there and not know what to do. It might take over. I might get one negative thought leading on to the next one and so on. And I think talking through all those scenarios, the worst case scenarios, gave me some kind of comfort in knowing if that's the worst case, then I can still overcome it because I've been there before. I know what I'm going to do and I know how I'm going to tackle the whole situation. And I think, yes, that applies to everything in life. It's okay to sit down and be in the discomfort, to know that you can be in the discomfort more comfortably when you're there at some point in the future.
Exactly. We train our bodies to know how we feel when we feel really rubbish, when we're going through the hard sessions, we're going more and more deep and we're building resilience. But I think mental training is pretty much the same. And I'm interested about the sports psychologist that you mentioned there. So obviously the visualization was a big aspect of it. Were there any other like key takeaways that you think you'll apply to life after Ironman?
We also did this like hypnosis, I think it's called, where
Yeah.
you like she walked me through everything. We sat down and she was talking me through the ups and the downs, and I think trying to just let life happen, give up the control aspect of it, and just go with the flow. I think that's definitely something I took from the session in general. And then putting words to things that may seem meaningful at some point. But the more we talk about it, the more meaning it has. And at some point, it's going to also it gives more reflection. It's going to trigger some things in you that I think are necessary in order to conquer those mountains that we're going to climb. And before I started this session, I told her this seems like Mount Everest I'm about to climb and I can't see the top yet. And how am I going to get there? And she's like, one step at a time. Like, okay, you're right. One step at a time. And I think if you're doing something crazy like an Ironman or you're going into something that seems unfamiliar and a bit scary or frightening at some point, seek help. I mean, open your arms and be open to new inputs and to getting some professional input as well.
Would you consider yourself an emotional person?
Oh, definitely. I cry all the time. I I mean, people who know me and people who are really close to me, and I think most of my followers as well, who've been following along for some years now, they know that I wear my feelings outside. So if I am happy, very happy, it will you won't be in doubt. But when I'm very emotional as well, for example, this Sunday I was crying through the whole race. Every time I saw someone, it was happy tears, but I was a bit wearing it all, and it was such a relief every time I saw someone. It was like, okay, I kind of got I don't know, just a kilo lighter, and I was flying afterwards. And I think it's so important to be in tone with your feelings, and I let them just be there. I don't try and fight them. I am just with them, and I know that there's a reason that they're there.
How was the journey of the emotional roller coaster? Because I guess when you are training for anything, it's pretty tiring. So not only does it take time, you say, oh, it's 10 to 12 hours of training, which, is significant, but also you are pretty tired by the end of that day. Then you've got to do it the next day, and you have that accumulative load. And then when you get tired, you perhaps become less rational. It's the human psychology of it. You get upset by things like, oh my goodness, I don't have any milk, I cannot make my coffee, and this is the end of the world. Little things like that can push us over the edge when actually it's like, well,
Yeah.
hun, just go to the shop. It's actually not that big a deal. Um,
Chill. Yeah.
exactly. It's okay. But how did you channel that through? I also, you work, you're busy, you post like online a lot. It takes a lot of your time, general life. How did you kind of keep the emotions in check?
First step about being aware of them. I think I knew that I was doing this for me, back to my why. So I was constantly cheering myself on because I knew that even just the smallest victories was going to add up to hopefully one big one at the end. And yeah, it does. I mean, you're a lot alone. You're alone with your own thoughts, and when you have 4 or 5, 6 hour bike rides, you're alone on the countryside. You haven't got anything in your ears to pump you up. You're just there with your thoughts. And it's tricky. I gotta be honest. It's tricky. But finding that comfort and that peace within yourself is step one. And it requires a lot of attention, and it requires a lot of practice. That's with anything in life. If you want to master something, you gotta be able to practice it over and over and over again. So I was practicing over and over and over again, being in the pain by myself, not being able to distract myself with anyone or anything. And that gives you a lot of resilience. So also focusing on the whole instead of seeing the small problems here and there, like, oh shit, I don't have any more oat milk for my coffee. Oh my God, my world's falling apart. Being like, it doesn't matter. I can go down, I can buy a coffee. Like, it's chill. And then I think every time you're like trying to be the optimist instead of the pessimist, like, or seeing the problems, I choose to be an optimist every day. I wake up, I try and see the positive, I try and see the light at the end of the tunnel, and then surrounding yourself with people who can always be like aware of what's going on and say, hey, chill. Like, you're overthinking this, or this is not an issue. Like, up here, look at the big picture and not just the small problems that are right ahead of you. And have the eye on the target. I think that really helps a lot.
And also perspective in that as well. You said
Mm.
the training is hard. So I love the quote, this is what hard feels like. It's supposed to be hard. You say, for example, the Ironman, you went in knowing this was hard. You're having conversations with people like, are you going to do that? And you're like, I'm going to do this. I've decided to do it. But it's also that aspect of the start of your training block will be training how to train, training how to feel running after you've just been on a hard bike session, or when you're all wet because you've just been in the pool, or something like that. I think
Yeah.
it's understanding that, not saying, oh my goodness, I am so weak, I'm not going to be able to do this because I find this hard. It's like, no, you're supposed to find it hard. For example, interval sessions, they are hard. They make you fitter, they make you stronger, but they're hard. So it's that understanding, isn't it, of just letting yourself feel the pain, feel the emotions, and not suppress it and then kind of blow up in one spectacular fashion, as you can imagine.
I agree, completely agree. And I was very lucky to have a trainer who understood me and who was coping with the whole of Laura. And she has a bit more of a holistic approach to training. So she was a lot on the feeling, and she was also asking me how I was feeling before a session and after a session. And when everything, like the whole world just fell apart because I couldn't hit the watts that I wanted to or whatever, she was like, it doesn't matter. Like you were going hard. And I think hard is enough for you today. Hard may look different tomorrow. And every day is a new day. So at least you're trying. And I mean, pat yourself on the back for just trying, not for hitting the watts or the pace or whatever you're trying to.
I love how you say she deals with the whole of Laura, because it's not like just some robot like fitness machine. You also are a person.
Yeah, we're not.
I think that's quite a funny way to put it. And then a massive part of that whole like person approach is also the recovery of that. And since we last spoke, you have moved apartment. So I think it's really interesting creating like a home that you feel like you can relax in, because it's a lot about the environment of that as well, especially, you know, even aside from training recovery, coming back in after a day of work or whatever and feeling that you're surrounded by something that calms you, color that calms you, textiles, whatever it is, the space, the lighting. What was your approach to when you were designing your apartment and kind of making it feel like your little haven?
Well, I'm very lucky to, yes, I've moved into a new apartment with my partner, and I think we were, when we started looking into the market and looking into buying something, we were looking for a space with a sense of calmness and space and lights and a place where you can feel at home. And when we found this apartment, we weren't in doubt at one point. We were like, this is where we need to live. Luckily that we were able to get the apartment instead of some others, and now we're here. And I think designing the whole place, of course there's been put thought into everything and the things that we have, but it's also been a lot about creating a calm space where you don't feel overwhelmed or packed or um, get stressed by sitting there. I mean, there has to be air to breathe and live, and we have, luckily enough, we have space to do that here. So calm colors on the walls, calm pictures, good lighting, and some plants that make you happy. I mean, pictures that also have some kind of personal touch on everything on your life and has something you can relate to and look at daily and be happy about. I think that's kind of what's defined our home now, and we're very happy with the turnout because we feel very relaxed every time we walk in the door and are here and we want to be here. I think that's also a great sign.
Yeah, exactly. It's having your own little bits. I love when you kind of think about interiors and it's like that professor who's like 90 years old and he's surrounded just by things that he's collected over what he's done, you know, and all the little bits like, oh yeah, this is my Ironman bracelet that I actually did and I kept it because I want to keep it because it's really significant to me. And, you know, it might not be the aesthetic for my interior, but I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep this, you know, lots of little bits that we collect over time of our travels and our experience. Like, how lovely to have that all kind of compiled together. And then when you were kind of in the peak of your training and working and living and all that sort of thing, how did you find the mundane element of life? Doing the washing, you know, the inevitable, all the sports kit that you can imagine, or, you know, just emptying the dishwasher, you know, hoovering the floor, all of those things. How did you find the rubbish part of it?
Oh, that was tough. That was the last thing you want to do. I mean, you can maybe get to the point where you're like, okay, I can make a good nutritious dinner for myself and for my boyfriend, but all the other stuff, hands down, I gotta be honest, I had help. For those months training for an Ironman where we were just in and out, and like when my boyfriend and I we saw each other over a dinner, it was like, okay, we have an hour to just sit down here and relax. We want to prioritize that hour to be present and not to vacuum or clean or I don't know, all those things that also come. So I had a really, really good cleaning lady that was helping me every second week with the bigger clean, and that was what I prioritized those months. Then I mean, you don't prioritize eating out or whatever, but that was completely worth it for me because it gave me so much more energy in my everyday life and energy to be together with the people that mattered.
And I think that it's actually important to talk about these more mundane elements that everyone has to clean their bathroom or whatever it is. But it's like, how do people balance that and not piling it up? And also the prioritization. Some people might say, well, I really don't want to cook, so I'm actually going to get some, really healthy pre-cooked meals or meal plans or whatever, or they might, get someone to help cleaning and that sort of thing. But it's funny, isn't it? We kind of can easily forget that part. But if we don't have a clean environment around us, it's going to clutter our brain. It's going to be one of those elements that you're putting your 100% into whatever project you're working on, whether it's a physical challenge or whether it's a big work project or anything it could be. But then you're neglecting other
Exactly.
parts that really drain you.
And I think one of my favorite quotes is preparation prevents poor performance. And I am all in for preparation. So I prepare my food if I can. I prepare to know that there's a cleaning lady who's going to come and help me with that. I prepare my trainings. I mean, everything is preparation for the Ironman. And it's a lot of preparation. It's a lot of months and a lot of things have to add up. So prepare and schedule what you can, and then know that you can control just as much, but not everything. And then just chill with the rest that it's not out of your hands. Yeah.
And on the note of preparation, what did your training plan look like? What was your training structure, the average week in Laura's life?
I was training, yes, between 10 and 15 hours. Sometimes peak weeks would be like up to 20 hours. I was typically going for 3 weeks of load and then a fourth week of deload. And that's how it worked for me and my trainer. And she was really good at trying to, again, be there for the whole of Laura and Laura's schedule, which might include a lot of traveling and social events and stuff, because that's also what I knew. I did not want to down prioritize. It was something that I knew I was going to be having, or I needed to juggle within the next couple of months, but I would be doing my very best to try and fit everything in. And she was okay with that. So my weeks looked different. I don't want to say they looked like, but some weeks were more intense than others. And again, you have to master 3 disciplines. So it's a good combination of both swimming, cycling, and running. But some weeks you had to combine the two in a day. So you would probably go down and do a morning swim session in the pool, because it was quite cold until like June here in Denmark, to go open water at least. And then you would maybe do an afternoon session as strength training, which is crucial when you do so much endurance training as well, to build up the body, because you're tearing it down on all the other disciplines. And then on days where I had a long session, maybe 5 hours, 4 or 5 hours on a bike, or I had 2 hours, 3 hours of running, then I would get a rest day the day after, where I would, yeah, chill, be social, go for a, I don't know, dip with my friends or take a hot yoga session. And those things you also have to make sure to put into the schedule. It's not always about load, 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 because then at some point you're gonna break.
Then with the general life aspect of it, I guess, because, well, you said that you did it intrinsically for you. You wanted to do this challenge for you. But why did you decide to publish it online and talk about it online? Did that add pressure? Was it nice? Was it a deliberate thing?
I think it's a combination of the two you mentioned. Of course, there is pressure related to being a public profile online, and people have opinions about what you do, everything you do. And I know that. I've been online for some years now, so it was it was a big decision, but also something I had considered pros and cons of before announcing it. And my profile is my life, and it's very honest, I would say. I try and be as honest as possible. I try and be as relatable as possible, because I am just a normal girl who has a normal life and has the same problems as everyone else. And I think that setting this goal for myself also kind of removed a lot of the pressure, because I knew I wasn't doing it for anyone else. And all the pressure that came with social media and publishing it online kind of didn't like attach to me. I didn't give it any meaning, I want to say, because I knew what my why was. And I genuinely hoped that going forward with something that I was frightened of and never knew if I was able to do at some point would hopefully inspire some of the other girls or guys and the people following along to jump into something that might seem a bit too frightening for them as well. And that's what I'm here for, hopefully to inspire people to do something or pursue a more active and healthy lifestyle. And then you can debate whether an Ironman is an active and healthy lifestyle, but at least you learn a lot about your physical and mental state as well.
You spend a lot of time with yourself to figure out who you actually are and what sort of things you actually like to do. And then with the social media aspect, being an online personality, do you find or struggle with any comparison between other people, other creators, other people your age? How do you kind of combat that as an individual?
I'm very cautious of what I expose myself to on social media. I I use it, of course, as my job as well to post and share my life, but I don't use it as inspiration. I try and seek inspiration in the real world. I try and surround myself with people who inspire me. And when there's something specific I need to get inspired to, I would listen to a podcast or watch a documentary or something very specific in the in the context that I'm kind of seeking. And I think that's something that has helped me a lot to also continue doing what I'm doing because it's a rabbit hole and it's also something that you have to be very cautious of how you navigate on it. That's kind of the decision I took when I started social media. I was like, if you do this, you say A, well, then you also say B because you can produce, but you're not going to be the best and most authentic you if you compare yourself to others constantly because then it's not going to be your own personal profile.
It's all about balance. The more conversations I have, the more I realize literally everything in life is about balance. It all comes down to balance. It's that simple. It's quite frustrating actually how simple it is. Everything, pretty much every situation or like thing in life it's about balance, isn't it?
It is. It is. And I think it's okay. I mean, of course, yes, I get sometimes carried away by just sitting there scrolling, or my algorithm is just like spot on, and then you just kind of the hours take yeah, each other like one after another. But I'm at least cautious of it, and I really try and be aware of how much time I consume and who I follow and what they give me. It's a very personal side like to, and you have to be very aware of, you have to be the mother, your own mother sitting there telling you, hey, Laura, put a time limit on. I have 45 minutes on my Instagram. So I know after 45 minutes it's going to give me an alarm and then I shut it down. And then, yeah, okay, sometimes I need to just post a story after that or reply someone, but more or less I use 45 minutes to an hour max a day, with it being my job as well. So I'm very happy with that constellation or construction I've built up. Yeah.
That's quite impressive to manage to do it as your job and also have it within that on average. I understand you say that, but I think I also have a timer on my Instagram because otherwise I could just sit there and you don't realize that you're scrolling. It's so unbelievably clever. The algorithm, like all the different things, even I don't even know if it's like what you talk about is they hear or something like that. Sometimes you don't even search it and it's so cleverly engineered. But what's your average screen time looking like in general on your phone?
My screen time, I think I was actually looking at it yesterday. It's around 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
So I try and be very present. I would like to turn it down a bit more, but I also, again, have some things I need to do as well that I'm very privileged to have as my job. So I think it's going to be tough to minimize it even more. But when I am living my life daily. The phone's in the pocket. I take a picture and then I might upload the story 20 minutes, an hour later or something like that. But I try and be very present at with the people I'm with or in the now.
Yeah. I think being present with the people you're with, it's not only very polite, or actually I would say it's kind of the baseline, low baseline for being polite. I think you can just be impolite if you don't do that. And I think also for your own, just being in the moment. One of the pet peeves of my husband is when someone's sitting at the table. If you're at a restaurant and you look round, and often it's a kid, but even, there's sometimes adults, and there's someone sitting on their phone at the table, because when you sit down at a table, traditionally, historically, it's a time when you are together. You have, you mentioned that when you and your partner would have dinner, it might be the only time you have spent together in that day when you're at your peak busy time. So to have then sit down with someone, there are exceptions, like it's not a massive rule, is it? But it's that just awareness, not only for other people, that it's kind of rubbish when you don't have someone's full attention. You're trying to tell a story and then you have to do that awkward kind of like winding your voice down because they're not listening, and everyone's been there. But it's just having that eye contact, that listening, that understanding, that I think when we don't do that, and perhaps it's less present now than it was previously, I think it can make us all feel a little less human than we actually are.
And we live in such a digitalized world, so when we have those social interactions, I am a big advocate for trying to get people together in real life. And because I mean the energy, the there's so much more to get from real life events and so on. That's also why I host regular events with my community of girls here in Copenhagen, because I find that it's what has the biggest impact on everyone and makes you the happiest on also a long-term basis, looking at what's going to make you live the longest as well. It's one of the things, the social interactions.
I've been doing a bit of thinking about the link of who we are, like in the general society in the modern world, and then also historically what we would have been like. Again, taking this is very generic, I guess, but people would live in tribes. They would live with their families. There would be a massive community within that, big loyalty, big, people would protect each other. There would be that sitting down at meal times. Obviously, Instagram didn't exist. There would be lots, and obviously there's a lot of terrible things that happened as well, but I'm talking about the positive aspects of community. But I think that when we live somewhere, perhaps far away from family, we live far away from friends, we don't actually have friends that live nearby, we speak to people just digitally, or perhaps not really at all. We don't interact, we don't make eye contact with people, we don't have that, if someone has a kid and they're busy in that day and you say, oh, I'll look after the kid or whatever, things like that. That's a whole community thing. That's what a lot of grandmothers would do for the kids, basically the whole time, historically. And I think the further we move away from that, we have massive depression and anxiety. There's a whole like medical aspect of that as well, but a lot of it is lifestyle based. And I'm not at
It
all
is.
like belittling, serious cases of it, but I think a lot of it in, what we all feel in ways is because of that lack of the kind of things that we need. Like the last time we spoke, it was about, getting that fresh air, getting that daylight, drinking water, being outside, all those points. But I think it goes deeper than that as well, to the where's your family, where's your friends, the unconditional love that families, again, generally have for each other. It's not that you like them always, but you always love them.
Mm. And there's actually a really good series on Netflix called Blue Zones. I don't know if we talked about this before, but I've watched it a couple of times, and it's also talking about just longevity in general, social interactions. Like it's all lifestyle based, and people try and look for the quick fix to become 100 years old, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, we've got it already. We just need to look up from the phone and be there, and it's gonna fix itself.
Yeah. I ironically saw a reel the other day, and it was this girl, and she put a lot of clips of life and her living her best life or whatever in this video. Of course, it was very effective, and it was, my mum was right, it is just that damn phone. And obviously, it's a bit tongue in cheek, but a lot of the time it is that, you said there, you take a photo, you put your phone in your pocket and you continue. Maybe you post it later. You don't just have to like snap away all the time, because you want to actually appreciate it. And at a sports event, do we just watch it through a phone? We might as well just sit at home and watch it on TV. You'd see it a lot better. The reason we see, I think of like cycling, the Tour de France. If you want to go and see the Tour de France, you don't go to watch it, because really, if you wanted to watch it, you would watch it at home, because you see all the stats, all the riders, all through the race. You see it, you go because of the atmosphere, because you want to see them in real life. And yet people stand there and there's just a sea of phones. It really puzzles me.
It is. And I think that's also what I really love about endurance sports. You're forced to not have your phone on you. You're not even allowed to have your phone on you when you do an Ironman. So you're just present. I mean, there's nothing to distract you. And I think being so used to having it on you and letting it consume your everyday life and inspire you and whatever, you use it all the time. That's also, I could imagine that was a big challenge for a lot of people as well, not being able to have something that can give them kind of the doping they need to complete something of that. So I love doing sports, and I love doing sports without my phone. I typically have it on me because if something happens, I need to be able to call someone. Sometimes I just wear my Apple Watch. That does the thing and the job by itself. So trying to get out there, find some people, be present, and just at least be aware of the thought that you're in charge of being aware next time you sit at a social event. It doesn't have to be the person next to you, or you don't have to be pointing fingers at people and telling them to put their phones away. If you just lead by example, it's gonna spread like rings in the water.
Yeah, exactly, because it's different. People notice it, and it's weird that it's different, because it's quite natural, isn't it, biologically, to not be on our phones. But yeah, it's definitely something that I think would be a really great takeaway. It's certainly something I'm trying to do in my life, and it's not easy either. Like, I'm in no way perfect at it, as I'm sure no one is. And with your Ironman training, you did, was it about a 10 months block of training for it? Was there any particular moments that stand out as really, really great and then really, really bad?
Well, I think the start of the training was really, really great. I was deeply motivated to do this. I was at that time writing my thesis, so I had a lot of sedentary time. I was sitting in front of the computer most hours of the day. So having something that I knew I had to do and that I really started to look forward to, that was just perfect for a time like that. And even having the possibility to train twice a day because your trainer said it. And it's not about like debating whether you should or not. It's just like, of course you should, because it's a part of your work in a way as well, to just go down and do that. You said A, you say B as well. So I was enjoying it a lot. But those months were also January, February, March, maybe April as well, where it was dark and there was not a lot of social events and stuff to do. And then we hit the summer, and then I got admit it started getting a bit more tough. A lot of traveling started to consume my calendar, and I'm very social in general, but even more social in the summer. I think we all are, because you are outside and people feel like being social, hosting birthdays and weekend retreats and so on. And that's where I started to feel kind of burnt out a bit as well. I started to feel like the training was not the biggest priority. It was the social aspect. And that's because that's what I've always done. It's been my life. I've lived that way. And then having to try and juggle a full-time training program with a full-time social life, with a job, with all those other things that follow. It was just constantly down prioritized, but it's kind of tough to down prioritize something that's already put there in the schedule. So you have 5 hours. You can't just do 3 hours because that's not the program. And I was kind of debating why I signed up for this. And then that's also where I was very, very, very thankful for having a lot of people around to constantly remind me of, hey, this is tough. It's tough. You're also in a peak week right now. So just keep on trying. And so if it's only 4.5 hours and you can't make the half hour because it's your mom's birthday or whatever, at least you were there for 4.5 hours. So again, pat yourself in the back for just trying and trying every day. And at least you try and nail maybe 8 out of those 10 workouts. It's going to be okay. And not hitting yourself in the head all the time, which I'm really good at for not doing the training. So that was also something I had to overcome. And once you overcome that, it's just going to be so much more enjoyable because you start saying yes instead of saying no. And you're also constantly saying yes, yes, yes in your own head every time you're just doing something or trying to do something right.
I spoke to Tony McCann, who is a trail runner, ultra trail runner, and she won OCC UTMB last year in 2023. So she is a professional trail runner, and she said that when you are running and training that much, it becomes your personality. You know, all aspects of life, it becomes your personality. So when you were training, and obviously, you know, you had your job, you had social things as well, you have, you know, your online accounts as well. What was the thing that would make you feel like Laura again? You know, not just in trainers or in lycra or in sweaty kit, you know, because it also isn't, you can have nice kit, but, you know, it's not the most glamorous self that you will feel. You know, you're sweaty a lot of the time and whatever, like just natural, what training is. What would make you feel grounded, like, okay, I am Laura again?
Well, I think many things. First of all, I think running has been such a big part of my life, and even though it's training, it's where I can also relax and just in a way get into a meditative state at some point. So running was definitely something I was always looking forward to on a weekly basis, whether it was intervals or long sessions. And even for the longer sessions, I would take my friends along with me because I'm very privileged to have a lot of friends who can run as well. So that was where I was feeling I was myself. Then there was everyday moments where I just took time to stop for a bit, like go down to the water, take a dip, take my book, drink a coffee. Small things where you just kind of got to feel like that you're okay and everything's okay and just got to zone in with yourself and make sure that you're also taking care of yourself in this crazy hectic program you got going. And again, surrounding myself with people that love me for Laura and not for Laura who signed up for an Ironman or anything else, but just for the whole of me and for the person that I am and not for anything else than that. So that's definitely something I'm very thankful for.
So Ironman is ticked off the list. Are you
Yeah.
suffering with gold medal syndrome of, oh my goodness, I've done it now, what do I do now? Or what's next for you? Have you even got that far? You know, you still got your armband on, you know, it's only like 3 days after. So what are your thoughts?
I don't have blues, to be honest. I haven't really thought about what my next goal is going to be. And I think that's also going to be my next goal, to not set a next goal because I'm always jumping into something new. And it's always going to be bigger and wilder and greater and so on. But at some point, you also just have to stop. Again, like I was talking about, the whole just toning in with yourself, just enjoying life as it is right now. And I might wake up tomorrow and have a different story and might have set my new goal. But at the moment, I am just going to be present. I'm going to do what feels right. I'm all about the whole mind body connection. And you kind of don't have a lot of focus on that when you do an Ironman because you also have to get stronger and you have to get faster, and the body is like more a machine that you have to keep on fueling for those months to be able to do something as a race like that. So I'm looking forward to just coming back into my body and just feeling what feels right and doing on a daily basis what I feel is going to make me the best version of myself.
Absolutely. Yeah, just listening to your body, seeing how you feel, and that connection. I mean, at least you know your body even better now in your mind after all that
I
training.
do.
You
Oh,
know exactly
definitely.
how you're incredible. Well, thank you so much for coming on again. It was so great to chat to you. And if people want to check out what you're doing, I can link your Instagram in the description below so they can check it out. Anywhere else people should go, or is Instagram the main one?
Instagram is the main one. I also share all my workouts on Strava, so if you're interested in just replicating my whole Ironman journey, be my guest. Otherwise, I'm starting a triathlon club for women, which is going to be announced tomorrow, so probably already announced when this podcast comes out. So they can find that in the community group under my profile in my bio on Instagram as well, if they're interested in hearing more, or else they're welcome to just send me a message.
Amazing. Well, I will link those below, so definitely check those out. And thank you for coming back on, Laura. It was a pleasure to chat to you, and well done about the Ironman as well.
Thank you so much for having me again. It was a pleasure.